Gracias, vuelos y más.
¿Qué espera? Llame ya.
Broadcasting from Now Media Network's headquarters in Houston, this is Purple Politics, hosted by political expert and commentator Alina Gonzalez-Dockery. Join us to discuss the most important issues affecting our nation with fresh, balanced, and objective discussion on the first bilingual media network in the United States. Purple Politics starts right now.
Broadcasting live from Houston, from the space city to the world, you are watching Now Media Television.
Broadcasting from Now Media Network's headquarters in Houston, this is Purple Politics, hosted by political expert and commentator Alina Gonzalez-Dockery. Join us to discuss the most important issues affecting our nation with fresh, balanced, and objective discussion on the first bilingual media network in the United States. Purple Politics starts right now.
Good evening and welcome to Purple Politics. I am your hostess, Alina Gonzalez-Dockery, and we are here to discuss all things United States politics as well as an international news opportunity. I will be joined later on by Sergio Sarmiento, who is a journalist and author, and we will be discussing the presidential elections in Mexico. So our neighbors to the south will be holding their presidential elections as we hold ours in 2024. But first, let's focus on Washington, D.C. and the troubles Biden may be hiding very well. In that, we currently have an indictment of his son, Hunter Biden, for felonious gun possession for lying on his application while he was actively using drugs. We also have the Republican House starting their impeachment inquiries. Now, this is not an impeachment trial. This is the inquiry. So we are going to be looking into that. And Biden still has very, very low approval ratings, which is affecting the Democratic electorate, the common electoral voter of the Democratic Party versus the leadership, who is totally 100% behind his reelection. And let's not forget, Biden does not get any younger. He is at his prime of 81, and we are potentially looking at a Democratic primary candidate that will be 82 years old when he reaches inauguration, if he is to be reelected. So let's get started. First and foremost, Biden is hosting the United Nations this week in New York City, where he did appear for his third time as president to reflect a very strong, sturdy leadership and to ensure that the United States is a global leader. His primary focus of the United Nations speech was to continue its support of the Ukrainian war, the war that is preventing Russia from being able to go, as some fear, into other countries. It is also a plea to the other countries that are not as active or proactive in their, emissions and globalization of the environmental effects of their industries. So what are the implications of Biden's appearance before the United Nations? Well, first and foremost, many of the leaders have expressed a continuing gratitude for Biden's leadership, for his steadfast support of the global efforts for the environment, as well as being a good steward and partner with other countries in support of the Ukrainian war. However, the global leaders are also very wary and concerned about what is going to happen with this most upcoming campaign. Are they going to be seeing a return of Donald Trump? And part of the concern is that Donald Trump was very much a nationalist. He was America first and then the globe. However, he did, during President Trump's tenure, had achieved like historic peace treaties, to include the Abraham Accords and such. But it is a tenuous tightrope that Biden is walking, because at the same time that he is appearing very strong or stoic in his global partnerships and support, back home, he is not receiving the same type of support, to the point that our current DNC and Democratic leaders have steadfastly stated that they are behind 100% Biden, that they support his reelection, that they feel very strongly he is the candidate that can defeat Trump again. But his approval ratings are 40% or less, and his Democratic primary voters all wish to have a younger, more youthful, vibrant candidate, to the point that even very strong Democratic strategists and loyalists in the past are now questioning whether the Democratic Party should be placing all of their eggs in the Biden basket. That, to say, like Mitt Romney, who recently announced that he was not going for re-election, stated that it is time for the next generation to come into power. It is time that for an America to go forward in the future, that we do elect and have more youthful, younger generations to affect that change. And so not only is President Biden dealing with the fact that his own party, in essence, the very people that he claims to represent and know so well, do not wish, or question, I should say, question whether he should be running for re-election. He is now looking at a congressional impeachment inquiry as to the dealings he had with his son's, Hunter Biden's, business, whether the Biden family's acceptance of money from China, Ukraine, and other resources have effectively given opportunities for companies in other countries to have a direct line to then Vice President Biden under the Obama era, but even our current president. These are some serious questions. Some will say that there is no evidence of wrongdoing. However, the testimony from many of the whistleblowers of the IRS to state that the inquiries and investigations into Hunter Biden's business dealings have not been on the up and up. The questions that the Department of Justice has been weaponized to go after Biden's political enemies, if you will, to add a little drama, more specifically the DOJ's actions against Trump, the 2 federal indictments, plus we have 2 state indictments, and all have come in within a few months of each other. Ironically, that falls within the primary election. And if, Trump does win the Republican primary, or is deemed to even qualify for it, that he may very well be dealing with some criminal litigation, criminal trials during the campaign, the thrust of the campaign for the national election. So these are all serious questions that must be answered and looked into. And for some to say that this is just political backlash, that the Republican-controlled House is going after Biden because of the indictments of Trump, let us not forget that under Pelosi, she didn't even bother with an inquiry. She went straight to an impeachment trial on fictitious Russian inclusion, which has now been found that that was a lie fabricated by the Hillary Clinton campaign. And then they did a second impeachment trial based on a telephone call to the Ukrainian President Zelensky to ask for why was a attorney general for their country fired that was investigating wrongdoings by Hunter Biden and an electric company that he was on the board for. With all of this turmoil, President Biden still holds fast to belief that there is nothing that he has done wrong. He continues to support and love his only living son, but is not stepping in to interfere with the indictments that have currently come down against Hunter and the expectation that more will follow for tax evasion and such. And one figure that is always by his side, that supports him unequivocally and states that he is absolutely able and fit to run a rigorous campaign, if let's just say against Donald Trump, and to continue forward and serve our country for 4 more years, is his loving wife, Jill Biden. One thing you can say about this couple is they are a partnership. They are supportive of each other. And though she may be more on the quiet side and not as vocal on media and such, Jill has provided a sense of stability for Biden, and perhaps a little too much stability, because some will say that Jill steps in to protect her husband a little bit too much and to save face. So there are some serious questions. And as we grow closer to the actual election, national election, more of these questions are going to be spearheaded and looked into further. But as far as the Democratic National Committee is concerned, there is no primary, despite there being 2 candidates running for the Democratic primary. Marianne Williamson, she is an author, a guru for motivation and inspirational speaker who is running, and she ran back in 2020, but also Robert Kennedy Jr., who, though he is only receiving 14% of the polling of Democratic primary, he is gaining recognition. He is gaining popularity. And he is one that is able to probably unite independents, moderates on both Democratic and Republican. But at this time, he is not being considered as a serious contender. They are not providing any type of debate. So this is something that will continue to evolve as we go forward. After our commercial break, I will be joined by Sergio Sarmiento, journalist and author, to discuss the riveting political history being made in Mexico, not only with 2 females running for president, but also a very important Supreme Court ruling in Mexico. So stay tuned, and I'll see you back after the commercial.
Hi everyone, I'm Clara Capano, and I am so excited to announce that my new TV show, Be Productive, is airing now on Now Media. You can catch it online as well as in several local stations in your immediate market. So go to nowmedia.com and catch all the strategies, all the tips you need from industry leaders on Be Productive.
This has been a Now Media Networks feature presentation. All rights reserved.
Hey, Lily says AT&T is giving everyone their best deals.
Minus the air quotes.
Best deals.
No need to wink. Others say they give everyone a deal, but not everyone gets the best deal.
Told you, the best deals are for everyone here, with a choice of plans.
You were right.
Is she always right?
Always.
At AT&T, we give everyone our best deals on every smartphone.
Taking a trip in the next 12 months? Airlines are under tremendous pressure and they're practically giving away their unsold seats. Like every crisis, this one will end too. But right now is the best time to take advantage of giveaway ticket prices on their unsold seats. We're not allowed to publish these low fares online. The only way to get these rock bottom giveaway prices is to call. So phone low cost airlines now for airline ticket prices you may never see again.
Hey, are you a small business owner that's struggling to double or triple your revenue and profits? My name is Michael Rager. I'm your business guide with Teach Your Business to Fish. Our success operating system will help you double or triple your profits every 2 to 3 years while actually maintaining some semblance of a home life. Call us at 713-201-5559 and we'll help you become a real success.
Hello and welcome back to Purple Politics. I am your hostess, Alina Gonzalez Dockery, and I am absolutely privileged to have a very special guest today, Sergio Sarmiento, journalist, author, and a key journalistic responder in Mexico. And here he is to provide us much insight in the historic Mexican political climate, with not only the presidential election that is occurring today, but also with the latest Mexican Supreme Court ruling. So welcome, Sergio, to Purple Politics.
Alina, it's a privilege to speak with you and with your audience.
Well, as I alluded, there's a lot of firsts happening in Mexico. Let's start with the September 6th Mexican Supreme Court ruling that decriminalized abortions in certain states of Mexico, but also opened up the reproductive rights of women to the federal clinics. Can you give us a little bit more of a background as to how this impactful decision has been embraced or opposed in Mexico?
Well, the decision is very important, although it is still a very limited decision. What the Supreme Court has done is overthrow a previous decision by a district court that had considered abortion legislation, federal abortion legislation, constitutional. The Supreme Court has decided by a divided vote that abortion is a legal right for women, and at this moment, that ruling only applies to the federal legislation. And we have to realize that every state has its own abortion legislation. So basically, what we're going to see right now, it's a whole bunch of suits by women's organizations, especially HIRI, a feminist organization that was responsible for this process that we've seen so far. But the decision of the Supreme Court is actually very clear. It says that the woman has the right to make a decision on her reproductive rights. And even though it recognizes the right to live of the fetus or the embryo, it decided that it is the woman that has to make the final decision and not the authorities. This actually means that eventually abortion will be decriminalized in Mexico, but it's going to have to be done state by state because the federal abortion legislation actually it's not used very much because most people live in situations in which they're actually in a state, and then it's the state legislation that actually has a special bearing on their life. But what we're going to see is eventually the decriminalization of abortion in Mexico. So far, there were only a few states, a couple of states, and in Mexico City, where I live, that had decriminalized abortion. But after this decision by the Supreme Court, it's only a matter of time. We will see decriminalization of abortion eventually. And in fact, even at this point, if a woman, let's say in the state of Jalisco, is arrested for an abortion, she can always go to the federal courts and try to get an injunction to get her free from any penal accusations against her. So it's just a matter of time, even though the decision by the Supreme Court doesn't necessarily and automatically decriminalizes abortion, but it's just a matter of time.
And I find that so interesting because here in the United States, in 2022, the United States Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, which established a right for women, or at least not a right to abortion, but the constitutional right to choose, to have the privacy to be able to choose. And so they then took that to say each state has the right to make its own laws. And so in many ways, here in the United States, we have now gone backwards 50 years. And for many, some look at pro-life as being pro or anti-abortion and pro-choice being pro-abortion. But the reality is that it's more for the reproductive rights of a woman, the ability to have the choice and not to have a criminal sanctions. So I completely understand where in Mexico these women, and I celebrate them because this is a huge door opening, because it seems to me, and as a lawyer, I get to be a little bit, nerdy in that it opens up the ability to go state by state to challenge the discrimination that it is based on gender. Am I reading that correctly?
Sure. No, you're reading that correctly. And I should say, as a Mexican, I'm also very aware of the fact that if you change your justices, that, and they have to be changed once, once in a while, that the decision can be reversed. That's what it's so important to have a very solid majority in the Supreme Court, but also a very solid support from the people. And that's very important. That's something that we have seen in the states where the nation is so divided regarding abortion rights. But in any case, so far with the present court, we have a court that has been attacked by the Mexican president, Andres Manuel López Obrador, all the time, because he considers the court to be too independent. But it was precisely because of this independence that the court decided to make a decision that President López Obrador should have made a long time ago. And I say this because López Obrador comes from a leftist party, from a leftist movement, and everyone assumed that he was going to decriminalize abortion by legislation because he has full control of both chambers of Congress. But he didn't do that. It had to be a court he calls conservative, but it's actually very liberal in many ways. But it's this court that has actually made the decision. But we all know that if the composition of the court changes, and in fact, President López Obrador wants to change the court before he leaves the office and totally eliminate all the present justices and replace them with new justices, well, then the situation might change. But so far, there are a lot of people in Mexico who believe this is the right decision. I am certainly not pro-abortion. I would never recommend abortion. I think a woman has the right, has to make the decision. It's tough enough for a woman to get an abortion, but putting her in jail after she gets an abortion is totally unacceptable. And what we're seeing, and because of the kind of ruling the Supreme Court has made, that's the way we're going. Basically, the court doesn't get involved in a philosophical discussion as to when life begins or not. Basically, what the court is saying is that the woman has the right to make her own decision, because what's happening in her body is something that pertains only to her, and that's a decision by the court that I fully support.
Well, and I find that what you said about wanting to change the makeup of the court, because here in the United States, our Supreme Court justices and many of our federal justices, they have a lifetime term. So it just happened to be under former Donald Trump that we had several openings occur. One with the death of Supreme Court Justice Ginsburg and some others stepping down. So I find it interesting because we're dealing with, our packing the court, the threat of, we're just going to load up, add more members of the Supreme Court. So I'm curious, how would Mexico's president be able to change a whole entire Supreme Court justices?
Well, basically, first of all, our justices stay in office for 15 years, and then they have to, they pass on to retirement. Basically, what President López Obrador wants to do is change the Constitution, get rid of all the present ministers, and appoint the new ministers, the new justices. We call them ministers, and appoint the new justices through an electoral system. He claims that this is more democratic, basically because he's a very popular president and he has control over a very efficient electoral machine. He knows that he would be able to get all of the justices from his own lists, but basically he wants to change the Constitution. That's one of the reasons why the election of 2024, we're going to have elections in the same year, the United States and Mexico. But if President López Obrador gets not only his nominee for president elected, but if he also gets a constitutional majority in both chambers of Congress, and he claims that he can do that, then he would be able to change the Constitution at will. He can establish a dictatorship if he wants to, because he'll be able to totally change the Constitution, just as Nicolas Maduro did in Venezuela in the early part of this century. That's why I also think that it's important that we have a good electoral result. I don't care which party wins, but I think it's very important that no party has total control. We had a party dictatorship for 71 years with the PRI, the Institutional Revolutionary Party, but the power of López Obrador and his party Morena is so huge right now that I'm very much afraid that we might get into another perfect dictatorship, as Mario Vargas Llosa, the Peruvian writer, called it in the 1980s.
Well, and I am so glad you led out of this segment to this. So we're going to break for commercial. However, we will be back with Sergio Sarmiento, and we're going to talk more and go more in depth into the 2024 presidential election process, and also some of the historical firsts, such as both parties, candidates are women. So we'll be right back.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Eva Marie smoked 12,000 packs of cigarettes over 15 years. She quit, and now there's a new lung cancer screening that could save her life. You stopped smoking. Now start screening. No matter how much you smoked, early detection could save you. Talk to your doctor or learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Hey, Lily says AT&T's giving everyone their best deals.
Minus the air quotes.
Best deals.
No need to wink. Others say they give everyone a deal, but not everyone gets the best deal.
Told you, the best deals are for everyone here, with a choice of plans.
You were right.
Is she always right?
Always.
At AT&T, we give everyone our best deals on every smartphone.
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that I would never be able to get over it and that my kids wouldn't have a father. I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. For the longest time, fear held me back from ultimately being who I wanted to. I had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
I don't remember how it started. Our back and forth. Victory. Fumble. Repeat. It always came back.
Dad! Okay, here we go, throw it! Yeah.
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Nice.
The best bilingual news, business talk, and technology content 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You are watching Now Media Television, the first bilingual media network in the United States.
Welcome back to Purple Politics, and I am your hostess, Alina Gonzalez Dockery, and I am joined by Sergio Sarmiento, journalist and author. And we left the last segment going into a very interesting topic in that the 2024 Mexican elections is going to make history, because undoubtedly it looks as if Mexico is going to be electing their first female president. I wouldn't say I'm a feminist, but I definitely want to see, females grow in capacity of leadership and empowerment. And so how is the feeling in the communities in Mexico about this historic movement that you're undergoing?
Well, I should say, first of all, Alina, that I am a feminist in the sense that I believe women are entitled to exactly the same rights and privileges as men. In Mexican legislation, the politicians have tried to give preference to women. Right now, for example, you have to have candidates in a political election that are 50% women and 50% men, regardless of the preparation or the capacity of them. But what I really like about the two candidates that have been selected for the 2024 election is that both women are remarkably independent. They are candidates because they're capable. Both of them are capable, and because they've fought for whatever they've accomplished in a very intense way since they were very young. I've known both of them for many years. The official candidate, the candidate of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, is a scientist from the National University. She has a PhD. She's a very bright woman, very much, I guess, attached to President López Obrador. I don't like that. I prefer to have someone more independent, but I have no doubts that she's committed to her ideals and that she became the candidate. In fact, in a field of they were in a field of 5 men against 1 woman, and she was able to actually come out ahead because she was more popular. They used a public opinion poll. In fact, both parties used public opinion polls to decide who their candidates were going to be. Xochitl Galvez. Well, the official candidate is Claudia Sheinbaum. By the way, she would not only be the first woman president, she would also be the first Jewish president in Mexican history. Xochitl Galvez is totally different. Her father was an indigenous person, an Indian. Her mother was a criollo or a mestizo, a mixed blood person, and even though she is fairly light skinned, her father was very dark, and she grew up in an indigenous community in the state of Hidalgo. She was very, very poor. She was a street vendor when she was a teenager. And then she went to university. She went to the National University just as Claudia did, which is a free university. She was very good at university. She's an engineer. And then she set up a company that built intelligent buildings and high technology equipment. I met her in the year 2000 in the World Economic Forum in Davos. She was selected as one of the young global leaders of that year, and she was remarkable in her 20s, already with a company of her own. And she actually got into politics almost in a serendipitous manner. President Vicente Fox, who became president in the year 2000, asked a company of headhunters to look for someone to take over a specific office. They actually found her. She turned down the first offer that she got from President Fox, and then she eventually accepted the office of top officer of the Indian Affairs Community of the federal government of Mexico. She has had a remarkable trajectory as well, and I'm quite happy about that as well. It's not the fact that we have two women candidates, but it's the fact that we have two excellent women candidates vying for the office of President of Mexico. If we were going to get, and I think it's about time that we got a woman president, but it's certainly going to be someone smart, someone with a keen knowledge of the country, and someone who can actually change the country in many ways.
Well, I know that it has been 65 years since women were allowed to cast their first vote, and that was in 1958. So to come on the heels of 65th anniversary of women's right to vote in Mexico, and then also with the Political Electoral Reform Act that was passed in 2014, which really was what catapulted very capable, empowered women to be in Congress and cabinet seats, and you had that plurality, excuse me, I can't say that word very well, of genders. But to have two candidates such as Claudia Sheinbaum and Xochitl
Galvez. Xochitl Galvez.
Okay,
Xochitl.
we were.
That's
I
a Nahuatl.
apologize,
That's
candidate
indigenous
Galvez.
pronunciation. Yeah.
But she's with the Broad Front for Mexico party. Is to me it is it's just empowering to see women that are capable, smart, driven, and such an important example for women of all ages, but even young girls, as we're starting to see girls having more ability to follow their dreams and pursue them. I mean, here in the United States, we celebrated our first female vice president, and Kamala Harris, just last year. I mean, I remember it was, I believe, in the election of 1984, where Geraldine Ferraro, and I was a young girl, was picked to be a running mate for vice president. And that was the first time. So to me, it's something to be very celebrating the advancements, and it's not just because of what chromosome we are or that we are female. It is to see smart, intelligent, aspirational women achieving great things. Even like and I know just a little bit of what I've read on the two candidates, but even PhD, engineer, former mayor of Mexico City, and politicians, those are things to be celebrated. And how is the theme is machismo, the machismo personification of Mexico changing now to more feminista?
Well, there's always been macho Mexican males, just as there are, macho Texans males. I've seen many of them. I'm going to disagree with you in one thing. The 2014 legislation did create gender quotas, quotas for women. And in my opinion, that has actually been detrimental even to the cause of women, because basically what we've seen is that the traditional politicians put their wives and daughters and cousins and proteges in positions that that they weren't really prepared to actually fulfill. What I like about these two women candidates is that both of them actually earned their stripes before the law was changed. They weren't benefited by preferential legislation. They were just very good politicians. They were very tough, both of them. I've known them, for many years, but both of them actually made their inroads because they were very good. They were very capable. They weren't given a special seat in Congress just because they were women. They actually conquered whatever political position they had. And that's actually something that makes me more happy because, as I said before, it's not that we're getting two candidates, female candidates, because they were given preference over the male people in their parties. They actually beat them up. They actually beat them. They actually got the candidacy by being better, by speaking better, by offering better ideas, by having done well in whatever positions they had. In the case of Claudia Sheinbaum, the fact that she was a good mayor of Mexico City, of course, is very important. In the case of Xochitl Galvez, the fact that she's been such a brave opposition senator against López Obrador has been very important. That's what actually made people look at her. But it wasn't that they were given their positions out of the generosity of the male political establishment. They actually conquered their positions, and that's what makes me so proud of them.
And I apologize if I gave that impression. I'm in a male-dominated career
industry. Oh, I know that.
Industry as of and I assure you, doing what I have done for 27 years, I've had to show my grit and such, because even today there are some males that will look at me and treat me as if I'm just the secretary and not the attorney. So by no means do I think that just because of a legislation, a woman should get a job merely for being a woman, just like there shouldn't be.
That's the legislation we have in Mexico
like
right
the
now.
equity jobs. It should be based on ability and experience and such. But I love that there was an opening of the door, if you will, if anything. And with these two very capable candidates, I'm sure it is something that can be celebrated for both, and also even for an indigenous community to see that I would say, coming from the streets, from not having the money and being able to take advantage of that education is something to be applauded as well. So, Sergio, thank you so much for appearing on my show and educating me on the political process in Mexico. And I hope that you'll come back and enlighten us and give us more reporting as to what is occurring in Mexico, because now I am definitely going to be watching that presidential election probably just as close as I will be ours as well. So
I'll be watching yours as well.
Yeah, this is going to
Very
be
important
an
one.
interesting one. Maybe I'll bring you back so we can talk about this lovely circus that we have right here going on. But thank you, Sergio.
Thank you, Alina.
Stay tuned and we'll be right back after this commercial break.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Eva Marie smoked 12,000 packs of cigarettes over 15 years. She quit, and now there's a new lung cancer screening that could save her life. You stopped smoking. Now start screening. No matter how much you smoked, early detection could save you. Talk to your doctor or learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Hey, Lily says AT&T's giving everyone their best deals.
Minus the air quotes.
Best deals.
No need to wink. Others say they give everyone a deal, but not everyone gets the best deal.
Told you, the best deals are for everyone here, with a choice of plans.
You were right.
Is she always right?
Always.
At AT&T, we give everyone our best deals on every smartphone.
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that I would never be able to get over it and that my kids wouldn't have a father. I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. For the longest time, fear held me back from ultimately being who I wanted to. I had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
I don't remember how it started. Our back and forth. Victory. Fumble. Repeat. It always came back.
Dad! Okay, here we go, throw it! Yeah.
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Nice.
Welcome back to Purple Politics. Again, what a privilege to have Sergio Sarmiento, journalist and author, to educate me and us about the significance of the presidential election in Mexico, as well as giving us an insight as to the reproductive rights issue and battle in Mexico, as well as the two presidential candidates that are both female and very qualified. So now let's go back over on this side of the border and an update on the impeachment trial of Attorney General Paxton. So the Senate held what would be surprising, a brief impeachment trial. And after 2-week process, they did vote to acquit Attorney General Paxton. So what does that mean? That means he gets to resume his duties as the Attorney General of Texas. He has been cleared of all wrongdoing, and that from this point forward, all of those issues that were raised by those 8 whistleblowers are now put to rest. But what is really significant about the vote of the Senate is to show the divide in the Republican Party. And where we're seeing that, yes, the Democratic senators voted on party lines for impeachment, to convict for impeachment. There were some moderate Republicans that did vote for impeachment, but for the most part, you have the new conservative Republicans. These are people that, or I'm sorry, elected officials that would be more coincided to the ultra-right. I don't want to say MAGA, but they are now being coined as the true conservatives or the Freedom Party. Why this is important to really start looking into is, like Texas, the United States Congress is also having its own infighting. And what we're seeing is this declaration of Rhino, Republican in name only, which personally speaking is an insult and a farce, because what's happening is you're having this duality of personas kind of battling out in the Republican Party, both in the state as well as in the national party, in that you'll have what was coined as a traditional Republican, and that would be the Ronald Reagan Republican. Conservative on fiscal policies, less government, strong army, but typically wanting to keep the camel's nose, if you will, the government's nose out of your personal business, to the ultra-right conservative movement that has gone even further than the Tea Party, and that they are absolutely in showing their force to have stricter cuts to spending and pushing forward an agenda that is definitely more extreme than what would be the typical traditional Republican. And the reason why we're seeing this dichotomy is Texas is this trial really showed it even more so, because what you have is a Republican-led House of Legislatures went ahead and voted to impeach. And that's what brought it to the Senate. And the Senate held its trials. But there were already 7 key senators that outright wanted to dismiss the impeachment trial and dismiss any of the allegations without hearing against Attorney General Paxton. These same legislatures and senators were able to bully in a way, but coax the other Republicans to vote for an impeachment. So what does this say for the Republican Party in Texas? You're starting to see a power shift. You're starting to see a little bit of a battle going on to what is happening to the moderate Republican or the traditional Republican versus this ultra-conservative Republican. And like Texas, this same battle is being seen in the House of Representatives in Congress. House Speaker McCarthy is having an extreme problem now. McCarthy has now found that there are 7 conservative Republicans that are blocking even the ability to bring spending bills up for debate. More specifically, recently, the military expense bill was brought forward to see if we could even bring it to the floor for debate. This is not even for a vote. We're talking just to bring it onto the floor so that it can be openly debated, discussed, potential negotiations, but it could not even be brought to the floor because 7 conservative Freedom PAC representatives have blocked that, and they pledged to block even more so. Well, what does this tell us? This tells us that House Speaker McCarthy is on a bubble, and his bubble of being able to continue to lead is in serious question. And in fact, some are even looking at a possible ouster of the Republican Speaker of the House. See, McCarthy would be deemed as a traditional Republican. He believes in the ability to balance the equities and do what is right for the party, but as well as the nation. And some say that with this power struggle, what we're looking towards is that he might be better off actually trying to get a bipartisan agreement on the other side. Because the bottom line is that with especially military spending, which are the salaries, increasing of their benefits, things like that of our volunteer military forces, that's usually a very easy bipartisan expenditures, so will he actually go and be a true leader and build consensus? We are going to see. Now, let's just flip to what we all love to talk about, Trump. Trump continues to make headlines, and now it is in California. 8 state delegates, 1 senator, 7 representatives of the California legislature has asked the court to determine whether or not Donald Trump is eligible to be included on the ticket, on the ballot for the primaries. Again, this is the continuing debate and constitutional education that we're all going to be thrust into, in that, does the 14th Amendment, Section 3, prevent Donald Trump from being able to run for election? So basically, just a reminder. So Section 3 of the 14th Amendment states that anyone who is insurrectionist or has caused attempts to overthrow the government cannot run for elected position. Now, this was created after the Civil War. And there have been some debates among legal scholars, some very high pundits, saying that 14th Amendment absolutely applies and the Don cannot run. However, some have now been backpedaling, saying, well, wait a minute, he may not be held under this 14th Amendment, because the 14th Amendment, specifically this section, goes to elected officials in Congress, legislature, or appointees. So the question is the president not part of that elected official? Now, what is really good about this push for the court ruling is this will then force the appellate process. It will force this to go before the United States Supreme Court. Now, some will say that because during his presidential tenure, Donald Trump was able to appoint 3 of the U.S. Supreme Court justices, that it may be a foregone conclusion that they will basically state that, yes, he can run. However, the constitutional issues that are going to be debated and going before our courts is really, this is stare decisis, what we call first appearance. So this is going to be, for some of us that are lawyers or legal scholars, a rather exciting time to see this. But what it really does is put the big question mark. What if someone who currently is 47-point favorite as a primary in the Republican primary, what happens if he is disqualified? So we haven't even gotten to the indictments. There hasn't even been criminal proceedings. There's going to be a lot going on. And especially as we are 4 months out from the Iowa primary, how is this going to turn? So make sure to tune back next week with more on Purple Politics, because we are really starting to just gear up. Things